Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a question for you.
Yes, Leslie.
Under wrongly, you've got person as the means and you've got joy as an end. But if I'm understanding you correctly, instead of joy, if you're using person as a means, wouldn't that then be pleasure? Pleasure?
No, that's a very good point. I think that pleasure oftentimes is going to be what your motivation is. But remember it said that that is really done, I think, without recognizing this distinction. Even if we do realize that joy is what we're pursuing, that joy is the authentic goal, right? Even with this understanding, we still have to be very much aware of ourselves. We recognize that the difference between joy and pleasure now. But we always have to be checking ourselves because our habit is going to be trying to pursue joy as an end. And if we do this, even innocently, we end up treating others as a means. For example, often we do this very much innocently in our experiences, right? We know this. Say the joy comes from our relationships with others, our authentic relationships with others. But it still oftentimes takes a heroic amount of love, of self-mastery, I should say, to be able to love others authentically. Think about friends that we might have had as in our experiences. Our friends that we might even have been very close to, as the relationship changes, as they change, or as we change, right? We experience less joy. And perhaps it is pleasure, right? This person ends up getting into very much difficulties, and we try to help them at first, and they're non-responsive, and soon it's a trial to be around them. And so we let this relationship die, right? We let this relationship, because it's no longer joyful. It's no longer pleasurable, perhaps, but it's no longer joyful to be around them. To some degree, we have been treating this other person as a means. Perhaps not purposefully, but to the degree that we've done that, right, we have lived inauthentically, and we have not experienced the authentic joy that we're meant for. But this oftentimes happens in many of our relationships. This is, if we find our relationships with others draining and dragging, that oftentimes is the reason, right? That we have not mastered ourselves, or at least we haven't become sufficiently self-aware, that we're not allowing ourselves, that we're keeping ourselves from allowing ourselves to be motivated by our feelings rather than the good of the other for their own sake. But that's a good question. Any other questions? Daniel, yes.
I was trying to tie in some of the points that you made in terms of what actually brings about someone's, I guess, examination as you had, and that it takes an experience. It takes something where you reevaluate what life is about. And I wanted to see what could be some not formulaic formulas to replicate such an experience.
See, this was one of the biggest challenges of the new evangelization, that we can't manufacture it. We cannot create circumstances that are going to cause a conversion of heart, to cause this reevaluation. We can look at particular circumstances and try to discern, I think, from one perspective, by listening to the other person, what their presuppositions are, what their motivations are, what their current, what their feelings are, what their current state is. And we can help to draw out from that these questions and start helping them to ask these questions. Right? But ultimately, the Holy Spirit has been doing that already. Right? Remember my experience of the Holy Spirit tapping very gently until the Father allowed him to pull out the 2x4. Because for some of us that are very hard-headed, right, it takes the 2x4 to wake us up. We can do this gently, and you might not get a response, but you may be planting seeds while you're doing it, right? But ultimately, this is one of the reasons why, again, with evangelization, with trying to bring Jesus Christ to others, we have to recognize that it's on their time, not ours. And God is very patient, is very, very patient with us. And so the more we're engaged with people, the more we are concerned about them in this relationship, rather than making a conversion, right? But really concerned about their good, the longer we may be in their lives. Now, this isn't to say that we don't try to do anything with people that we know we're only going to have a short experience with. We do what we can in each experience, but we have to recognize that we may only be planting a seed, right, or pulling a weed, or perhaps watering, or my forte, throwing manure, right, fertilizer. But we may only be, we probably, in fact, most likely won't be around for harvest time. We're very blessed to be able to be around by harvest time. But the more we are in a relationship, and a relationship with love and trust, the more the other person realizes, right, that our concern is their good, the more likely we will be around for harvest time, that we will have these impacts, right? But again, we have to be careful not to mistake ourselves for the Holy Spirit. This is, I say this all the time, and I continually fall into that same error. Oh yeah, I'm the Holy Spirit, I'm going to make this happen. And it doesn't, right? It doesn't. In fact, when we realize we're not, oftentimes we recognize, I've had experiences where I've thought I've hit every question, every point, right? This person has no way out, and nothing. And another time when I'm talking to somebody, and I'm tripping all over myself, and I can't get the words out, and the thoughts don't come to me. And all of a sudden, either then or a few days later, they come, what you said was exactly that, so profound. And I'm going, what was it? And they tell me, and I go, I don't think I said that, right? It helps to reaffirm. First of all, it helps us with humility, but it also helps us to reaffirm that what we're doing, right? Our job is not to convert, as Pope Francis says. Our job is to introduce this person that we love to the person we love the most. And these two best friends, right? We want them to be best friends. We know we can't make it happen. And if we try, we're probably going to mess things up. We leave it to them. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, Dr. Delaney. You spoke earlier about to use someone being more insidious than hate. And I was going to ask, would you suggest any questions to ask of ourselves to examine whether or not our relationships are utilitarian?
Yes, that's a very good question. Are our relationships, and what in our relationships are utilitarian? Again, I think that it takes knowing ourselves, right? But it also takes, I think, oftentimes prayer, right? The more we come in union with Jesus Christ, and we'll talk more about prayer as we go along, right? But the more we become to know Him and to love Him, the more we start to see, instead of, remember I told my experience how the axe murderer was my reference point for how I was doing. The more we know Jesus Christ, the more He becomes our reference point, right? And the more we start to realize, and our eyes begin to open, oh, well, I'm not that way. I think, though, in our examination of conscience, within, which we should be doing each night, right? Every night we should be looking at our conscience. What is it our conscience has told us that perhaps we haven't listened to during that day? What is it that we have done that has not been for the good of the other? We can look at this in our mundane experiences, right? We should look at it in our mundane experiences. I can tell you, I can tell you an examination of conscience that, result that I had not too long ago. My mom moved in with my brother and sister, and we had my brother and sister, right? And we had to change, all of our addresses and everything. And there were a few places that weren't so easy to deal with for a variety of reasons. And I did find myself getting somewhat upset with the person. Right? Getting upset with the situation, I think, was justified. But I wasn't a very good Christian example in getting upset with a person. And I recognize still in that I wasn't as interested in the good of this person. I was using them to get again, it's very mundane and we do it all the time, right? But using them to get this task done, right? When in reality, if I really am Jesus, supposed to be, conforming myself to Jesus Christ and being him to others, right? They should have come away from this experience perhaps edified about the problem, but having had an experience of being, a joyful experience, right? Having had an encounter with Jesus Christ through me, and they didn't, right? Fortunately, they didn't know I was Christian. They didn't know I was Catholic. They probably would have figured I wasn't, right, in the way that I came across. These are the things that we have to be aware of. And again, I'm not saying that getting angry about a particular situation that is unjust or that is where the person isn't doing what they should be doing is a wrong thing. But I think that we have to be very careful to make sure that we're not focusing anger at a person. It really should be focused at an unjust situation that needs to be resolved. In any case, I think that looking at our encounters with others that we have done through that day, what is it that I have done that has not been, or my motivations that have not been really for their good, regardless of what it does for me. Right? Being concerned about those I encounter and their ultimate good. Does that?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Purifying our motivation, our intentions, and our motivations can be a tricky business, and especially as it concerns the examined, because of so often the mixture of intentions that occur.
Yes.
And how would you suggest someone in their examination go about looking at their motivations rightly to parse out the how much they will do good and how much they were trying to other intentions, basically, to move towards a better day the next day?
Right. No, that's a very good point. Daniel's point about having a variety, a mixture of intentions, and that's always going to be the case, right? Because we do want to get something done. I think in many ways, we can. I think perhaps the linchpin for me in my examine is, have I looked at this as a common goal, right? That with regard to is it something that we can, that I've tried to pursue in common? Or is it something that I've tried to force, right? Even against their will. Now, again, that's going to be very tricky. Oftentimes you're going to have experiences with, service people that shouldn't be working in service, right? Where there's not going to be any movement forward. At that point in time, I think that those situations, if you aren't going to be able to reconcile, if you're not going to be able to bring this person along to help you, both of you together accomplish a task for their good as well as their good, oftentimes is not really just their feelings, right? Their good ultimately is also their perfection. And so in this situation, you can discern, is this anger that motivated you to do this or really their good, to get their supervisor and explain to the supervisor where they have fallen short, what you think that, what could help them. But also, you would like assistance in getting this task done as well. Right? I think that those are kind of going to be mixed experiences, right? In any type of relationship with with somebody, where you're going to have a friend. Say we have a friend who's making a life-changing decision, right? And this life-changing decision means that they may not be around anymore outside of our lives. Right? And so we do want their good, right? But we also are fighting against, or maybe not fighting against, right? Maybe even working towards trying to convince them that maybe their good really is not this decision that's going to keep us from being together, right? Being able, you have to, I think in that situation, you want their good, right? There may be some valid things that you have to present to them but you also have to be very careful about how you do it. I think that examining your motivations and purifying your motivations may even help you to see whether or not it's even worth bringing these things up because of your inability to master, right, your emotions, master your inclinations, to give them really what you think is the truth versus what would serve your good. So again, with most things, right, you're not going to be able to actually get, I think, formulaic, because all of the circumstances are going to decide what the multiplicity of motivations are and how difficult it is going to be for you to sort through them. But in the examine, I think the main thing is just to try to ask for guidance, for God to uncover for you the various motivations, and to be aware of which ones were perhaps not as pure,